Welcome to this class on the topic of trait theory. I suppose more specifically it's on personality and looking at the relationship between traits and personality. First of all, let's start with a definition. Brooks, 1996. The definition of personality offered here was that specific characteristics of individuals which may be open or hidden and which may determine either commonality or differences in behavior in an organization. It's always wise to, when you're dealing with this, perhaps to stop the video sometimes and make a note of these definitions and go away and think about what has been said in the definition and see if it makes sense later. So use the stop button from time to time and make your own notes. Anyway, the definition explains how personality affects other people in an organization. And this could be through interaction, and more than likely is through interaction, because that's how we operate within organizations. We interact with each other, and our personality comes across through the interaction. The definition also suggests how individuals see themselves and to what degree individuals are perceived as a positive or a negative in terms of their contribution within the organization. So someone with a very pleasant personality, a very engaging personality, would be seen perhaps as positive. Someone who is very introvert and perhaps turned in on themselves, very quiet, and even though perhaps a good worker, may not necessarily suit all positions or all conditions within the organization or within the business. So individual personalities outline the way people behave in an organization. This is due to innate factors, factors which are inside us, factors that are central to us in terms of our personality. They're innate. There's nothing we can do about these. And these include personality attributes. Of course, we must allow for the fact that environmental factors also influence individuals. There are two views of the individual in that sense. There is the view that we are made up from our genetic code. This is our nature. And there's nothing we can do about that. That's what we've inherited. And there's a second component which we call nurture, which is the environmental impact on us, which changes us over time. These are all of the experiences that we've had: school, cinema last night, television, magazines, work, sport. All of these factors go to make us who we are as well. So we are really a combination of two parts. Nature, which is our genetics and the part of us we can't change. And secondly, the environment, which is our experiences. So let's look at theories of personality. Well, there are two perceptive ways of looking at personality theories. First one is nomothetic. This holds the view that we are determined by hereditary, and we're not influenced by the changing environmental conditions. Secondly, we have idiographic, and idiographic means that we are open to influence from the environment. So we have two new words here: nomothetic and idiographic. Nomothetic is, like what I was saying earlier, it's the nature. It's what we can't change. This is what we are given when we are born. And idiographic is how the environment in which we grew up, our school experiences, our friends and so on, how these experiences have influenced us to become who we are today. Now there are 5 big personality traits which I'll come on to in a few moments, but just for a second let's just introduce these. These were developed by Einzig in 1973. Einzig, a famous psychologist, he identified a nomothetic approach, stating that there are certain personality characteristics. So he was interested in the hereditary one, the one which is given, the nature one. And according to Einzig, if an individual's traits can be identified, then that person's behavior can be predicted. So if we know what the traits of the person are, then we can predict the person. So this is it's like science. This is empirical. There are 5 main personality traits which are relevant in determining the individual. So let's have a look at these, the 5 big personality traits. Well, the first one is agreeableness. This suggests that the individual is very agreeable or uncooperative. It ranges from one extreme to the other. The more agreeable, the more pleasant the person is, and the less agreeable, the less pleasant the person is. So agreeableness is a sort of a scale. It's a subjective thing, but we can imagine the personality trait being related to how agreeable the person is. Openness to experiences relates to whether we have an open mind or a narrow mind. Are we willing to embrace new technology and new ways of doing things and new fashions and trends in society? Or do we want to hold on to something very traditional, the traditional society? Extrovert and introvert. Are we extrovert? Are we open up? Are we open to the world? Are our opinions widely, openly held? Are we introvert? Are we quiet and retiring? Are we turned in on ourselves? So this is a measure of sociability, and sociability is how open we are, how closed we are to the world and to other people. Consciousness, or conscientiousness, I should say. Sorry, conscientiousness. Are we responsible, or are we irresponsible? Are we reliable? Are we responsible for what we're given, and can we see it through? Are we conscientious about our work? Are we conscientious about what we've said we would do? And there's a scale again between very responsible to totally irresponsible, and that conscientiousness scale is another way of measuring this personality trait. Finally, we have emotional stability. Are we steady in the way we think? Are we capable of coping with upheaval in our lives? And most of us have many facets to our lives. We have a working life, we have a social life, we have a family life. There are many parts to us, and are we able to balance these, or do they overlap? Do we take problems from family life into the work life and cause problems for colleagues who had nothing to do with the problem at the start, but we just take it in and inflict it upon someone else? So we have 5 personality traits according to this view, and if we could measure these, then we'd have some sort of fix on the person. The problem is, as you look at the screen now, you'll realize that these are extremely vague and extremely subjective. So let's leave those. I mean, it's an interesting way of trying to measure traits, personality traits. Let's look at Jung's personality theory. Well, this theory looks at 4 dimensions of behavior. He starts with or starts by explaining that there are two main types of personality, introvert and extrovert. Well, we've met this term before. The introvert, someone very quiet, somebody very inward looking. The extrovert, outward looking, open, outward looking, engaging. Then he selects two types of perception, sensing and intuiting. This refers to how we get our information. Well, if you think about sensing, we can pick up information about the world through our senses. We have sight, sound, hearing, touch, taste. We pick up information about the world from our senses. That's how we sense our way around. So our personality is picking up information all the time, and our personality is being molded all the time in accordance to the senses, what the senses are feeding back, and the volume of information coming back to us. And if it's continuous in one direction, then our personality will start to incorporate that, and we will adjust to it. But sometimes people say we have a sixth sense. Sixth sense is, I suppose, here what we call intuiting. It's intuitive. Sometimes we know things without actually doing them. We have a feeling for something. So that's what's meant here. We pick up our information in two ways, two types of perception. The third dimension of this theory refers to judgment picking. And there are two types, thinking and feeling. Well, the sensing is the feeling. It's what we're picking up from touch, from sight, what we see, what we hear, and so on. And the feeling is what we're trying to make sense of it, how we judge it. So from this he developed 8 personality types. Now I'm not going to go into these 8 personality types. First of all, it would be too big and too long, and secondly, it's not directly relevant to what we're doing here. But I think we should have some understanding of the two types, the two big theories of personality, Einzig and Jung. Jung's personality types are the extrovert thinker, the introvert thinker, and so on. The extrovert feeling, introvert feeling, extrovert sensing, introvert sensing, extrovert intuitive, and introvert intuitive. So I'm not going to go into these, but it's sufficient to know from this class that there are many theories of personality indeed, but these are 2 quite famous ones, and it's an effort to try and deal with traits and try to make some sense out of traits, so that perhaps traits will give us a bigger understanding of leadership and of personality. Okay, that sort of concludes this class. It's a short class. 2 big things to remember, Einzig and Jung, and what they had to say about personality. Personality obviously influences leadership. That's the connection. So we'll leave it for that. Leave it there. Okay, so thank you for watching.